We are very close to the start of the NFL season. Your home league drafts are happening. It's all going on. It's Best Ball Week over at DraftKings. Thanks to our partners at DraftKings for supporting this video. And you know what, guys? I thought it was time for us to do a real serious exercise in updating our priors. So we are going to do a fantasy football draft over on DraftKings today. I just updated my rankings, and we are about to hop into a draft, and we did get lucky enough to pull the 101. We are going to select Ja'Marr Chase. We are happily going to select Ja'Marr Chase at the 101. There was a little bit of a time in this offseason where I was thinking this is actually a great example of figuring out my priors, which is that, guess what? Ja'Marr Chase is a phenomenally good 101. There's basically no reason to think that he is not a good 101. Does Ja'Marr Chase have some more down games than you would sort of anticipate from a 101? Did he only have 4 100-yard games last season? I mean, yeah, that is definitely true. That did definitely happen. But the way that the Cincinnati Bengals defense is trending, absolutely brutal. Did they add a real third playmaker? I mean, they did add Noah Fant, who I don't anticipate is going to influence the offense at all. They don't really have a bruising running back. In fact, the most popular thing that I've seen on X, the Everything app this offseason, has mostly been Joe Burrow's going to have to throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in every single game to make the Cincinnati Bengals competitive. And I think that they're probably right about that, by the way. I mean, I think that the Bengals' path to winning 10, 11 games, to attempting to beat the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming season, is going to be throwing the absolute air out of the ball. So yeah, look, it's nice to take Bijan Robinson. It's nice to take Jahmyr Gibbs. CeeDee Lamb, I think, has similar upside to Ja'Marr Chase. But Chase has proven it. He's done it. He's been the number 1 overall player. He outscored Justin Jefferson by, I believe, over 100 points in full PPR. Actually, in DraftKings scoring in 2024, it was even more absurd, the difference between Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson. There is this element when you're sitting in your league and you are picking number 1 overall. I know that I feel this a lot of the time. The picks that you were going to have at 24 and 25, they're not as great as you want, right? If we go here and we look at the queue, there are some guys that, for me, are kind of hard to pick. There are some reasons to feel negative about Bucky Irving. There are some reasons to feel negative about Ladd McConkey. I actually think Josh Jacobs is like a pretty straightforward, good pick. Some fantasy managers don't like to click Trey McBride, even though he does have that bring back game against the Cincinnati Bengals in week 17. And actually, after watching the Bengals defense in preseason, that's a prior that I'm updating. You also have the T. Higgins spot right there. And that's actually to me, one of the key differences between best ball and between managed leagues is that, honestly, and maybe this is fear-based decision-making, but in a managed league, I personally would have a hard time starting T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase every single week. I would do it, but I wouldn't think that that is like the most optimal strategy to pursue in fantasy football. In best ball, absolutely no sweat, right? You're going to get all the good T. Higgins weeks. You're going to get all the Chase weeks. You're going to give the room a reason to give you Joe Burrow. I mean, that's one of the key things on DraftKings is you want the room to have an excuse to not take Joe Burrow. And you're not going to get that a lot of the times on DraftKings because people are just going to go absolutely nuts. They're going to go nuclear and they're going to say, you know what I want to do at 31 when I have Justin Jefferson and Ladd McConkey or Justin Jefferson and Derrick Henry? I would actually just like to go ahead and secure the services of Joe Burrow. I've relented on that a little bit. That's another prior that I'm updating. I started the offseason doing all these fantasy football drafts, doing all these best ball drafts, thinking, you know what? I probably don't want to take Joe Burrow in the 4th round. I probably don't want to take Joe Burrow in the 5th round. And honestly, I do think that was probably a little bit of a mistake because a lot of the historical stuff that I'm applying to Joe Burrow probably doesn't necessarily impact the way he's going to have to play this season. Mike Clay, whose projections I reference a lot, has Joseph Burrow projected for 627 pass attempts, 4,647 yards, and 34 touchdowns. And that's building in regression. That's building in the idea that it is unlikely that Burrow is going to be as successful per attempt as he was last year. So to me, it's definitely a clear boon to add Burrow to these stacks. And on this team, if I'm able to get Joe Burrow at 48 or at 49, I'm going to commit to it right now. I'm actually going to do it. I'm about to be up here at the turn. Bucky Irving goes. Would have been nice to be able to select him. I'm happy to take Ladd. Okay, well, he goes. I'm happy to take Josh Jacobs. I'm happy to take Trey McBride. I actually would have been happy to take Chase Brown, but he went at 17 in this draft, I think partly due to Zach Moss. Well, I guess I was about to say Zach Moss retired, but Zach Moss got cut. So we're probably going to take T. Higgins. I don't hate taking Kyren Williams here. That might be a little bit of an unpopular selection with some of my other slappy brethren. So we're going to take T. Higgins, and I am going to take Kyren Williams. I know that, Jacob Sanderson, Pat Crane, these guys, they don't think Kyren Williams is very good. And Kyren Williams is certainly not a great player compared to, actually, the argument that we got into on Ship Chasing this week was Kyren Williams compared to James Conner. Which one is better? And I don't even have a real problem with the idea that James Conner is a better player. But Kyren is set up in such a perfect system there in Los Angeles. The first thing is Matthew Stafford has returned to practice. I am recording this on Tuesday, August 19th. You guys are getting this a little bit later in the week for DraftKings Best Ball Week. Again, thanks to our partners over at DraftKings. But Stafford has returned to practice. We have we have a much lower amount of reason to be scared about the Rams offense. In fact, the Rams offense, I think we should be feeling pretty bullish because last year's snaps with Cooper Kupp, who was playing through that high ankle sprain, and Puka Nacua missed some time as well. Those snaps are being replaced by like a legitimate first ballot Hall of Famer in Devontae Adams. Maybe that's a hot take. I actually don't know if Devontae Adams is a first team Hall of Famer, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was. Kyren shares a backfield with Blake Corum, who is not able to cleanly beat out Ronnie Rivers last season, and Jarquez Hunter. And Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter are like fine picks in and of themselves. Like I think that you can take round 18, round 19, round 20 Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter and feel really good about it. But Kyren is a guy who my perception from June to now has changed on a lot. The first being he signed the contract extension. The other being, I think we just need to grow up a little bit with guys like Kyren Williams. Like, yeah, Kyren Williams's per rush metrics are just not very good. He doesn't force a ton of missed tackles. He doesn't even have a ton of, great breakaway rates. But I think Kyren Williams is in just a super valuable role. He has been the most effective runner from a fantasy perspective over the last two seasons combined. He ranks first in fantasy points per game from rushing. He also ranks in the top 5 on a per game basis in rushing yards, 87.3 yards after contact, which his haters would not tell you. His haters would not tell you that he is good after contact. And he averages 0.93 rushing touchdowns per game. He also avoids 3.8 tackles per game. And in DraftKings scoring, full PPR scoring, he averages 18.8 fantasy points. Now, he was much less efficient in 2024 than he was in 2023. His PFF rushing grade dropped from 90.6 to 74.4. His fantasy points per game dropped from 21.3 to 17.0. You could draw a trend line there. You could be saying, well, yeah, Kyren Williams is not a particularly good player. Wasn't even particularly good at Notre Dame. Certainly was not a super efficient player at college. I would say the way to think about Kyren Williams is he's a really good chunk play runner, not necessarily an explosive rusher. But since Sean McVay became the head coach, the Rams have ranked 4th in the NFL in rushing attempts overall, in the differential between the running back 1 and the running back 2. I don't think that Jarquez Hunter, I do not think that Blake Corum is going to impact that. Is it fun to be the Kyren Williams guy? Like, is it fun in your league to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to take Kyren Williams. In the weeks where he doesn't score a touchdown, it's going to be pretty brutal. The weeks where he does score a touchdown, it's going to be pretty strong. But I think he'll basically average about 65 to 75 rushing yards per game. I think he'll probably catch 2.7 passes per game with upside for more. We saw that a lot last year when the team was trailing. Things got a lot better for Kyren. But I don't think he's going to be spelled on third downs by Jarquez Hunter or Blake Corum, which is, that's basically half the battle, is just being on the field. Joe Burrow is still available. Oh my God. Oh, snapped off by T. Goodman 6. That is pretty frustrating. Another player that we've adjusted our priors on, we are going to select George Pickens, and we actually are going to take the aforementioned James Conner. So our team is now Kyren Williams, James Conner, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and George Pickens. That right there, folks, that was living out the thesis of drafting on DraftKings. Stuff like that is just going to happen, where the room just takes it from you. Makes no sense for that guy to have done it, but that's okay. We have Dak Prescott available for us. We have Kyler Murray available for us if we want to set something up for that game. Pickens, a guy that I have changed a ton about. He has been basically the best wide receiver in the NFL on throws 30 yards or more down the field. He has generated, basically, he has 0.646 receptions of 30 yards or more per game, which means he averages over half a reception over 30 yards per game. 17.8 of his receptions have gone for at least 30 yards. That's second best in the NFL since George Pickens entered the league. I suppose what is really interesting about him is that he has finished as a top 36 fantasy wide receiver in less than half of his games during the most recent 3 seasons. But think about the quarterback play that George Pickens has been forced to endure. I feel like that is kind of an underrated element of his story. Like, not only has he had some crazy bad offensive coordinators, but he also has had some crazy bad quarterback play. I mean, the 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt Canada is the offensive coordinator. The quarterbacks are Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. Absolutely brutal. That's his rookie season. That was the final Deontay Johnson season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then the next year, Pickens actually outproduces Deontay Johnson. Matt Canada gets fired in that season. Pretty interesting. It's Pickens' first 1,000-yard season. He leads the NFL in yards per reception. They redo the offense in 2024. They bring in Russell Wilson. They have Justin Fields. Pickens, again, 900 receiving yards. No other wide receiver on the team more than 548. Brand new stuff is happening for George Pickens now in 2025. Dak Prescott is going to be his quarterback. Brian Schottenheimer is going to be the play caller. Actually, let's find this out right now. Dallas Cowboys offensive coordinator. Is this going to be someone we know of? Clayton Adams. He's going to replace Brian Schottenheimer, who became the head coach. Adams' background is an offensive line coach and run game. So basically, this dude's not calling the plays. Schottenheimer is calling the plays. It's always fun to learn something new in the middle of recording one of these videos. But I think we can feel, honestly, a high degree of confidence that George Pickens is going to have one of the better upgrades in projection year over year of any wide receiver in all of fantasy football. I think that we can feel really good about him. It's actually funny that I brought up James Conner compared to Kyren Williams earlier, because Conner is a guy who I think ball knowers universally say is just way better than the general public thinks he is. He's averaged between 15.4 and 15.9 PPR fantasy points per game in each of the last 3 seasons. Over the last 2 years, he ranks second amongst running backs in avoided tackles per game at 4.5. He's also avoided tackles per attempt, 0.297. And the big number for me is that he is second amongst all running backs in the most recent 2 years in yards after contact per attempt. So that means that he avoids tackles, and when a defender does come in to tackle him, he's better at breaking tackles than almost every other running back in the league. I think there's been a big upgrade for the Arizona Cardinals defense in 2025. That's a pretty big deal. Having a good defense, a quarterback who honestly has really struggled to throw since coming back from his knee injury, or if you listen to the Kyler Murray haters, has basically struggled forever. I think we can feel really good about James Conner. I know my slappy brethren are looking at me taking James Conner over Chuba Hubbard, over RJ Harvey, over Alvin Kamara. Well, actually, the slappies don't like Alvin Kamara. They probably should. I mean, Alvin Kamara at pick 62 feels like absolute stealing for this user. My boy, actually, that's my boy. There we go. You never know who you're going to find in these rooms. My boy, Chris, is the one who just drafted Kamara at 62. So we have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Kyren Williams, George Pickens, and James Conner. This is looking like it's probably going to be a Dakota Prescott team. If you guys are new to drafting best ball teams on DraftKings, which I'm assuming that some degree of you have never drafted on DraftKings before, and this is going to be maybe your first summer, your first off season of doing so, you do not have the right to a quarterback. The quarterback you want is going to go way before you think, as that user just did to me with Joe Burrow. So we are going to start considering Dak at 96, 97, even though that is before his ADP. It's taking everything in me right now to not select Jakori Kroski-Merritt. I don't know. Maybe by the time you guys are watching this is just where Jakori Kroski-Merritt goes. Man, I don't really want to take DeAndre Swift. I would rather take, you know what? God, this is a brutal spot. All right, we're going to do Jennings to add in Purdy. And do we do Olave? Do we do Kelsey? You know what? Let's do Sam Laporta. I do not have a ton of Sam Laporta. Maybe that's a guy that I do need to update my priors on. I feel like the 2025 Lions offense is a really interesting one because there's hype on absolutely everyone, but you kind of have to determine, well, how many points are going to be available, how many yards are going to be available, because the 2024 Lions were one of the most absurdly productive offenses of all time. They were first in the NFL in points. They were second in the NFL in yards. They generated 39 passing touchdowns. They scored 29 rushing touchdowns, 16 for Gibbs, led the NFL, 12 for David Montgomery, and Jameson Williams actually had a rushing touchdown as well. 12 touchdowns for St. Brown, 4 receiving touchdowns for Gibbs, 7 receiving for JMO, 7 receiving for Laporta. And how about this? 3 receiving touchdowns for Tim Patrick as well. The projections are fairly interesting. My boy Mike Clay, and you can look at whatever projections you like. Fantasy Life has good ones. Establish the Run has really good ones. I think there are many directions you can go to find good NFL projections. Most people are going to do a reasonable job of getting you close. But it is hard to make every Lions option come close to their average draft position. Amon-Ra St. Brown projected for 7 receiving touchdowns. Jameson Williams projected for 5. Sam Laporta, only 103 targets and 6 touchdowns. The thing that is so interesting about the Lions players for specifically best ball, though, is that Week 17 matchup against the Vikings. It's going to be in a dome. It's going to have one of the higher totals. If the Vikings are able to replicate their defensive performance from last year and JJ McCarthy is able, I don't know, how close do we think JJ McCarthy is going to be able to get to Sam Darnold? I mean, do we feel that good about Sam Darnold? I mean, it's he is a really good thrower. JJ McCarthy probably not nearly as good of a thrower, right, as Darnold is. I would guess that JJ McCarthy is going to be a better processor. And if you're a better processor, that can lead to a lot better outcomes. Back to the Lions, though. Laporta is the one that I've been the lightest on because I feel like so much of his fantasy value comes from touchdowns, and that is not reflected in what he costs. I think I kind of like Hawkinson better. But again, the kind of guy you don't want to be light on. Do you want to be light on a guy who's going to run 85, 87% of the routes for maybe the 3rd best offense in football? I mean, was the best offense in football last year. How much of an impact is Ben Johnson leaving and turning things over to the guy who was the passing game coordinator last year? I mean, you would like to think that some of the state secrets, were kept inside of the Lions organization, but the Lions have big brain drain. Aaron Glenn's gone. Ben Johnson is gone. What does that do to the organization? It can't be good. I think you would have a tough time arguing that the Lions have not been put in a difficult position. Now, the Giga Brain take, your the 900 IQ take for the Detroit Lions, pretty interesting, which is, well, what if it's actually good for them to be slightly worse on offense? What if that's good for Laporta? What if that's good for JMO? And you might be saying, Davis, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, the offense being slightly less efficient could lead to more passing volume. They only generated 551 throws last year. Could get much closer to 600, 650 throws. That would make up a little bit of the discrepancy for Laporta and for Jameson Williams. So I'm about to do something that's probably going to make you guys angry. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it, assuming that I do not get sniped here. So first, again, assuming I don't get sniped, I'm going to select Dakota Prescott to go with George Pickens. That's going to set up a stack for us. I could do Dak and Kyler. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to take Dak. And then I'm going to go to the running back tab, and I'm going to search for Jakori Kroski-Merritt. I selected Jakori Kroski-Merritt at the 97th overall pick. Davis, why did you do that? Jakori Kroski-Merritt, you're being so serious about this. As of the time of recording this, and again, things can change, I believe that he probably is going to be the starting running back for the 2025 Washington Commanders. Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be traded. Again, right now, he has been moved up to consensus running back 31. This is over at PFF. I just like this page. He is such an interesting prospect because he was very, very good when he played at New Mexico. He averaged a first down on 37.2% of his runs. His breakaway rate at New Mexico State was massive. At the same point, you have to ask yourself, well, Jakori, why were you at New Mexico State? He got a lot of attention. He transferred over to Arizona. He, I think right now, is definitely ahead of Jeremy McNichols. I don't think he's for sure ahead of Chris Rodriguez, and I think that's why you could tell me I was doing something really stupid. You know, Davis, why would you select potentially Chris Rodriguez's backup at 97 overall? First thing being, I'm thinking of a way to say this that's not going to sound condescending to my opponents, but basically, on DraftKings, a lot of people draft really poorly. There are a lot of teams that are just structurally dead, that just do not have they don't have stacks. Their bye weeks are messed up. They spend too much capital at running back. They don't spend enough capital at wide receiver. They don't understand that it's full PPR. Like just a lot of dead, bad teams on DraftKings. There are also a lot of super teams on DraftKings. And I think the way that you can find super teams, well, it's from drafting players that are going to be the story of the season. My friend Scott Barrett calls these power law players. And he actually has this great article over at Fantasy Points every single year where he kind of describes his power law players. And I think it's pretty low, but it is not impossible that Jakori Kroski-Merritt would be one of the power law players. I don't know if he is going to generate enough receiving. He had only, I believe he only had 7 receptions his final season at New Mexico State. And then he really just had the one game for Arizona before he was suspended. You might be asking me, Davis, why was he suspended? Is he a bad guy? No, he got suspended because at New Mexico State, his freshman year, he played in a game and then redshirted, but then another player on the team wore the same number as him. Honestly, it's a small school. Maybe it was even the same jersey. And the NCAA never did the due diligence to go in and see if it, in fact, was Jakori Kroski-Merritt in that actual jersey. So he got suspended because another player played with his same number. But for example, Brian Robinson Jr. in 2023, so this was when the Commanders were not even good. This was the final Sam Howell season. He split carries with Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez. Brian Robinson Jr. did. 178 rushes, 733 yards, 5 touchdowns, 36 receptions, 368 yards, and 4 touchdowns as a receiver. Not great, not terrible. Was definitely a win where Brian Robinson Jr. was being drafted that season. I think that if Jakori Kroski-Merritt is who the Commanders believe he is, because they are rumored to be trading Brian Robinson Jr., I think that he can add on to that. You know, Brian Robinson Jr. that season averaged 4.1 yards per carry. I think JCM could be closer to 4.5, 4.8 yards per carry. It remains to be seen what he's going to do in the passing game. But I'm trying to load the bags on JCM right now, and I feel fairly good about it. Wouldn't say I feel 100% confident. I'm going to disregard my own rankings here because they need to be updated. I'm going to select Luther Burden with this pick. I think we should see what's available at quarterback. Stroud, we could backstack if we wanted. Love, we could backstack. I think we probably push it. Bigsby's an option. Actually, you know what? Let's take Love, and then we can backstack him with Romeo Doubs. We could take Marshawn Lloyd on this team. The reason why I did that with Jordan Love right there is it gets real thin. Like, by the time we come pick at 144, if this room goes against us, we could see Stroud, Lawrence, Young, Ward, Penix, Tua, and Geno all go. Then we're left with Sam Darnold, Anthony Richardson, Matt Stafford, Jackson Dart, Aaron Rodgers as, our second quarterback. You ideally on DraftKings want those guys to be your third quarterback. The preferred structure for me on DraftKings is 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 wide receivers, and 3 tight ends. Just to wrap a bow on Jakori Kroski-Merritt thing, there is this school of thought that you don't want to be drafting risers that much. That a guy who was available in the 20th round, the 19th round, the 18th round, that you would prefer to just skip that guy and say, okay, well, if Bill Kroski-Merritt, as he wants to be called, beats me, well, then I'll just let him beat me. It was my bad for not drafting him when he was a 20th round pick. And I really disagree with that for a couple reasons. The first being the pods are so self-selecting that if Jakori Kroski-Merritt's who you need, Jakori Kroski-Merritt's who you need. There's no debating. Like, if JCM is the highest scoring running back of week 16, that just is what it is. And you would have been happy to have taken him in the 4th round. Like, if you knew right now that JCM was the highest scoring running back of week 16, you would be totally happy. You'd be totally happy to take him. The 2v2s, it's hard for me to weigh them out. So, like, let's just say in this draft, Jakori Kroski-Merritt I took at the 9th round. So let's make the 2v2. Let's make it Jaden Reed. Let's make it Jaden Reed and Isaac Urendo versus Jakori Kroski-Merritt. But I'm trying to think about how to do this. So if instead of Urendo it was JCM. Yeah, so let's make it Dante Thornton and DeAndre Swift versus Jakori Kroski-Merritt and Romeo Doubs. That's just off the top of my head. This is an example of a natural 2v2 that would exist. I mean, is that meaningfully different? Of course it is, right? Of course you would rather have the player with the higher projection at a cheaper price. But I suppose the way that I conceive of it is that I don't have any control over the way the points are distributed in week 17, which obviously is where all the money is. And if I don't have any control of that, then I should just try and get as many rosters with as many players that I think can be the highest scoring players in week 17 and guys who can be the highest scoring players over the course of the regular season. Because I firmly am a believer in sort of the Justin Herzig, Michael Leone school of thought, where you got to get there, because I know that I have no control over the way that the players score in weeks 15, 16, and 17. And if I don't have any control over that, then trying to optimize for that does feel a little bit backwards. I mean, you do want to optimize for rosters that are structured very well in week 17. So you want to have your stacks. Jakori Kroski-Merritt, by the way, is a bring back for Dak Prescott and for George Pickens. There's a very long-winded way of saying risers generally in fantasy football do not rise enough. And if risers don't rise enough, well, then we should probably continue to draft them. Obviously, it's different in the format because of the cost difference, but maybe that's more for managed leagues that risers don't rise enough, particularly self-contained leagues. Like, if I was doing my home league with my buddies this weekend, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm taking Jakori Kroski-Merritt in the 7th round. I'm taking him after Pollard and Pacheco get off the board. And you might think that's stupid, and maybe this has already been proved dumb by the time that I publish this video, but I don't think so. I think that this is kind of a one-way train. I would love to select Dakota Prescott here. In fact, did Romeo Doubs go? Romeo Doubs did not go. I can also take my boy Dontavian Wicks on this team. Also a little bit lucky here with the quarterbacks. So maybe going back, if I would have known that this is the way the draft had gone. All right, so first we're going to take Jake Ferguson. And then next, we probably have the greatest positional need for running back. Do I think? Yeah, I'm taking Doubs. Our running backs are strong with Kyron, James Conner, and JCM. So we're going to take Romeo Doubs. The team, as it stands right now, Dak Prescott, Kyren Williams, James Conner, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Sam Laporta, Juwan Jennings, Jakori Kroski-Merritt, Luther Burden, Jordan Love, Jake Ferguson, and Romeo Doubs. And maybe you could say I made a little bit of a tactical error, put myself in jail there. We had a bigger structural need for running back than we did wide receiver. But again, I have no control over the way that points are distributed. I don't want to have an unstacked Jordan Love. Although I guess at the end of the day, unstacked Jordan Love is not really that bad because that wide receiver room, that pass catching room is so deep. I wanted to return to Jordan Love because I actually think that he is pretty interesting because he was so good in 2023 and then so much worse in 2024 playing through that injury. But in 2023, he generated an 83.6 offensive grade. He was awesome. He also ran a little bit then. Some of his passing numbers, his ADOT was 8.9. His adjusted completion percentage was 72.7. His turnover-worthy plays, super low, 2.5%. His big-time throw rate was 5.5%. A lot of those numbers got worse playing through the knee injury in 2024. Big-time throw rate down to 3.4%. Turnover-worthy play, 3.2. His ADOT fell to 9.2. His pressure to sack got worse. A lot of that stuff got worse. And I think it's a pretty easy explanation for why that happened. The dude got injured in their very first game of the season playing on that crazy field in Brazil. And then he came back too early. He actually had his best statistical game in the season in that loss to the Minnesota Vikings. The Packers ended up being 31st in the NFL in PROE. And I actually don't think that is endemic to the Green Bay Packers offense and to LaFleur. I think LaFleur, if anything, would actually like to pass a little bit more than he has done. And I don't really see any reason why they wouldn't. They spend the first round pick on Golden. They spend the third round pick on Savion Williams. I think they have probably written the book, sadly, on Dontavian Wicks, although we might take Dontavian Wicks on this team. Marshawn Lloyd seems to be unable to stay healthy, so if they do really want this ground and pound two-back system, they're probably going to have to do it with Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson. And don't get me wrong, Josh Jacobs is going to line up, and he is going to have a ton of rushes this season. I mean, we do probably get, 320, 330 rushes out of Josh Jacobs. Like, I'm not saying the Packers are not going to be a running team, but if you look at the tree that Matt LaFleur comes from, and if you look at what a lot of his other offenses done, they've been heavy passing offenses. He worked for the Rams. His lowest passing year, obviously, was 2018 in Tennessee, but his offenses have been 10th, 29th, 17th, 9th, 8th, 17th, 12th, and 12th in passing yards. They've been lighter in pass attempts. This is actually a crazy stat. The 2024 Green Bay Packers were 30th in the NFL in pass attempts, 12th in the NFL in yards. All years but 3 years that Matt LaFleur has called plays, his offense has been top 10 in net adjusted passing yards per attempt, so they're efficient when they do pass. I think Love, to me, does look like one of the guys in the range of secondary quarterbacks. Like, who could generate a top 5 quarterback season with a little bit of good luck? I think with a little bit of good luck, you could certainly see the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love end up there. We are up in 2 picks. We definitely need a running back. Running back is quite thin right now. We are probably going to take 2. I think I'm going to pass on Geno Smith. The sidekick wants me. Okay, well, he goes anyways. The sidekick wants me to take Geno. I'm comfortable doing Isaac Urendo even with the shoulder injury. Now what I need to decide is, do I want a pure contingency value guy? Do I want a guy with a little bit of standalone? You know what? I think I want a guy with a little bit of standalone. Let's take Woody Marks. So we now have structured a 2 quarterback, 5 running back, 6 wide receiver, and 2 tight end build. 5 selections left to make. And it's probably worth talking about Woody Marks and the Texans backfield right now, because it's an absolute mess, depending on who you believe. You know, if you believe that Joe Mixon is going to be back and healthy, well, then it's not really that much of a mess. If you're reading the tea leaves properly, I think you know the Texans are not anticipating that. The most recent update I saw from Aaron Wilson, NFL, who has followed the Houston Texans for a while, is that the Houston Texans anticipate that Joe Mixon is going to start the season on the NFI, which is the non-football injury list. The rumors going around are basically that he's had a procedure on his foot and that the procedure is not healing properly. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the name Run is literally in the name. So if the name Run is in it, I'm going to guess that you probably need to use your feet. If you can't use your feet as an NFL running back, that's going to be a problem. The roster as it sits now has Dameon Pierce, Nick Chubb, Woody Marks, Dare Ogunbowale, JJ Taylor. I think British Brooks is still sitting there on the roster, and there's like one other guy. Those guys are not going to make the team. JJ Taylor not going to make the team. I think it's not British Brooks. I think it's Britton Brown, maybe. Either way, it's a very funny name. My guess is that Nick Chubb probably starts the season as the leading rusher for the Houston Texans. Now, not enough to take him where he goes on DraftKings drafts. Let's see, where did Nick Chubb go in this draft? Let me Command F for Chubb here. Nick Chubb went at 116. So I'm not taking Nick Chubb on DraftKings. That seems like a bit much. There are other sites where you can take Nick Chubb at a more reasonable cost. I think we're doing an FFPC main event with Steph, Pat Carrane, Peter Overzet, and Jacob Sanderson, where we took Nick Chubb at a more, I think it was maybe like a 15th round pick. Actually, we took him in the 13th round on our draft that we did on Monday night, if you guys want to go and check that one out. But the best standalone value to me right now is Woody Marks. I don't think Woody Marks is very good, but you guys know, I don't know anything. I get stuff wrong all the time. I thought Laviska Shenault was going to be amazing. I thought Bishop Sankey was going to be incredible back when he was, a third-round pick to the Tennessee Titans, who ended up being a third-round pick in fantasy drafts. Times have changed a lot in fantasy football. But Marks is young. He's fast. He's elusive. He doesn't break tackles. I mean, you ask Woody Marks to break a tackle, and he's saying, dude, I would rather do anything else. I'm never going to break a tackle. You can't make me break a tackle. But he's really the only guy with any juice in this backfield. I mean, I think Dameon Pierce lost his juice at some point. I think Nick Chubb lost his juice about 16 leg injuries ago. So that's the bet I'm making on this backfield. I'm saying it's none of my business how he gets there. I don't know if it's Nick Chubb is injured, Joe Mixon retires, Joe Mixon goes on IR. Like, I don't know. But he's the young one. They traded up for him. I believe it's the same deal as Isaac Tesla for the Lions, where they traded a future third to go up and take Marks in the fourth round. Dang. Jackson Dart went, which is pretty frustrating. He would have been a really nice fit for this team. Richardson went. Is there anything left for us at quarterback? Wow. I hope you guys are ready to get immunized at the quarterback position, because we are about to take Aaron Rodgers. Just not a fun position to be in, and maybe I shouldn't be so dogmatic about the positions, but Rodgers is set up to start 17 games at quarterback, assuming that his, 41 years old? How old is Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers' age, 41 years old. Going to turn 42 in December. So by the time, there you go, Chris Rodriguez went, which, by the way, I think is good. I think Chris Rodriguez is absolutely draftable. All right, let's do Aaron Rodgers. So we have selected Rodgers. We have our three quarterbacks. And you know what? I'm going to let myself feel a little bit slappier, and I'm going to select Torrey Horton Jr. as well. So we have our three quarterbacks. We have 3 picks remaining in this draft. We can learn a little bit about Torrey Horton. So the first thing to know about Torrey Horton was that he was viewed as like a really, really strong prospect. He played his final season at Colorado State. According to him, at about 70% health. He was only able to play in 5 games, but he generated 331 yards and a touchdown. It was his 2023 season that was more impressive. He played in 12 games, had 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, 87.9 offensive grade, 2.74 yards per route run with a 10.2 ADOT. He was also pretty strong in 2022 as well, 2.77 yards per route run, generated good yak every year he was there, played in the slot and played outside. I think if you are looking to make a slappy pick in your drafts, what you want is the combination of things that Horton is at. It's actually, you know what's funny? It's not that dissimilar to the situation for Jakori Kroski-Merritt either, where you have the combination of the hype for the young guy, and you have the hype you have the anti-hype for the old guy, because Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been sat down. You know, the reports on Marquez Valdes-Scantling have not been good. So if you're looking at, you know, a lot of us are trying to do this year's Kyren Williams, this year's Puka Nacua, and obviously the chances of that happening really low, really light. I mean, you're just not anticipating that's ever really going to be a thing. But something that I've been trying to weigh out in my head recently has been like, okay, so if we grant that in a given year, there's like let's call it 1 in 100. So let's say 1% chance that a player is this year's Puka Nacua or this year's Kyren Williams. The true odds actually might be higher, right? So if you think like, okay, Anquan Bolden was the last Puka Nacua, Arian Foster was the last Kyren Williams. That's actually not 1 in 100. It's more like 1 in 20. So much higher actual. Don't make me do 1 in 20 math right now. 5%, I think is right. Please do not fact check me on that. So you have to weigh out the odds that Torrey Horton, well, let's say this, Torrey Horton 1 in 100 ends up being this year's Puka Nacua. So you then have to weigh that out versus what percentage of the time is Torrey Horton a stone zero. What is the value of hitting on this year's Puka Nacua? What is the cost of hitting on not hitting on, getting an absolute stone zero? I don't know how to do that, right? That is for sacrilegious and shady advice to figure out with the sidekick. It's not for me. I think that I want my portfolio of fantasy football teams to have a lot of guys like Jakori Kroski-Merritt, a lot of guys like Torrey Horton, a lot of guys like Alec Iomanner, a lot of guys like Isaac Tesla, a lot of guys like Adonai Mitchell, fewer guys like Darius Slayton, fewer guys like Andre Yoshibas, and maybe, honestly, that could absolutely be, dang, Harold Fannin Jr. goes, that's a bit annoying. That could be totally backwards, right? I could, and I'm totally willing to admit that I could be wrong about this. We need a running back here. Yeah, I mean, I think it's easily DJ Giddens, running back 2 for the Indianapolis Colts. Third tight end, we could take Freiermuth with Rodgers. We could take De'Ami Brown as our 8th wide receiver. We could take Juwan Johnson. I think I'm just going to take Freiermuth because this team had no stack. And then we'll have 1 wide receiver left as our final pick. Our team is Dak Prescott, Kyren Williams, James Conner, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Sam Laporta, Juwan Jennings, Jakori Kroski-Merritt, Luther Burden, Jordan Love, Jake Ferguson, Romeo Doubs, Isaac Urendo, Woody Marks, Aaron Rodgers, Torrey Horton, DJ Giddens, and Pat Freiermuth. Let me go ahead and star Dontavian Wicks on this team. We got our tight end, so we just need any wide receiver. So we could do Turpin here as well with Dak Prescott. Honestly, I don't even know. No, I was literally just gonna search Steelers. All right, let's go. Teams, Steelers. We're going to do some live research right now. Calvin Austin, I don't want to take. Robert Woods, I don't want to take. Roman Wilson, I don't want to take. So that was a quick search, finding absolutely no one that we liked. I mean, did this team go exactly according to plan? Not really. The whole thing would have looked different. Were we able to get Joseph Burrow at pick 47? Because then we also wouldn't have taken Connor. We probably would have taken DJ Moore. Didn't ever have an opportunity. I guess I could have taken Purdy with JCM. Who would our running backs have been? Braylon Allen, Scattaboo could have been our running back too. We never would have gotten the opportunity to take Tootin. I mean, Urendo I really like. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm absolutely happy to have the services of one Mr. Isaac Urendo. He is one of my, I believe he is my most drafted player in best ball right now, and it's pretty simple to see why that is. I mean, he's the running back 2 on the 49ers. The 49ers depth chart, by the way, if you guys have not been keeping up with this, the 49ers running back, first off, the only healthy one right now is Christian McCaffrey. Urendo has a shoulder injury. Jordan James has a broken finger. Corey Kiner hurt his knee. Patrick Taylor got injured in their preseason game. They just added Jeff Wilson Jr., like just as a pure camp body. And they also have, yes, Keyshawn Vaughn. You're hearing that correctly. Former third-round pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, first off, I think that my boy Guerrero can beat out all those bums, depending on who is healthy in a singular given week. But the more important point is that Christian McCaffrey is a 29-year-old guy with an Achilles injury. And I love to draft Christian McCaffrey. I'm happy to draft McCaffrey. I think he probably is the odds-on favorite. If you told me every player in the NFL stays healthy for 17 games, who scores the most fantasy points, I'm going to go ahead and guess that I wouldn't even guess. I would say I feel reasonably confident that Christian McCaffrey scores the most fantasy points in football. But the fact of the matter is, he's a 29-year-old. 29-year-old running backs get hurt all the time. I'm fading guys like Derrick Henry, James Conner, Joe Mixon. I'm fading a lot of these guys for being overaged. So I should be taking a lot of their handcuffs. That's kind of neither here nor there, not the point of the video. But some of the best picks in the entire pool are the handcuffs for the first-round running backs. So you've got Algier. I don't know if you call Montgomery a handcuff. Shipley, Guerrero, Keaton Mitchell, and Justice Hill. I wish Ashton Genty had any handcuff running back. Taj Brooks, Ollie Gordon, DJ Giddens, Sean Tucker. If we knew the Packers handcuff running back, things would be a lot easier. I wish Ollie Gordon you could still get in the 20th round, by the way. Those were simpler times. All right, Jalen Knoll goes. AD Mitchell is there, who we could take with our final pick. I mean, I think, honestly, I do think Dontavian Wicks or Turpin, maybe even Tolbert is the proper play. We could take Jalen Lane as a bring back. Actually, I don't think I've selected Jalen Lane once. Trying to think about other bring backs. We could Devontae Walker and the Ravens don't really want to do that. Rodgers. I mean, we could take Isaiah Bond as a bring back there for the toilet bowl, the Browns and the Steelers in week 17. I mean, I think we all know what's going to happen here, which is that with the 240th pick in this draft, I'm going to do the blindest seal play possible and select Dontavian Wicks with Jordan Love, which I do all the time. I do kind of want to take AD Mitchell because I think he is a much better pick. I actually think it's absurd that AD Mitchell can be had in the 20th round. Okay, well, the room took care of that one for us. Final pick, we are going to select Dontavian Wicks. Our team is Dak Prescott, Kyren Williams, James Conner, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Sam Laporta, Juwan Jennings, Jakori Kroski-Merritt, Luther Burden, Jordan Love, Jake Ferguson, Romeo Doubs, Isaac Guerrero, Woody Marks, Aaron Rodgers, Torrey Horton, DJ Giddens, Pat Freiermuth, and Dontavian Wicks. Make sure that you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for daily fantasy football videos, and I will be back with all of you guys tomorrow. Thank you to our friends over at DraftKings.